얹혀 있는 고양이 제니예요. 오늘은 해리포터 2권 챕터 14 Cornelius Fudge 읽어보도록 할게요. 안녕.
Harry stood reluctantly, trying to catch the bus again, but people were now emerging from the great hall behind it, talking loudly, exiting from the front doors on their way to the Quidditch pitch. "Better get moving," said Ron. "It's near 11, the match." Harry raced up to Gryffindor Tower, collected his Nimbus 2000, and joined the large crowds swarming across the grounds. But his mind was still in the castle, along with the ballless boys, and his pulled-on and scarlet robes in the changing room. His only comfort was that everyone was now outside to watch the game. The teams walked onto the pitch to two monthly applause. Oliver Wood took off for a warm-up flight around the goalposters. Madam Hooch would release the balls. The Hufflepuff would be playing in the flannery yellow, while standing in the huddle having a last-minute discussion of tactics. Harry was just mounting his broom when Professor McGonagall came half marching, half running across the pitch, carrying an enormous purple megaphone. Harry's heart dropped like a stone. "This match has been cancelled," Professor McGonagall called through the megaphone, addressing the packed stadium. There were boos and shouts. Oliver Wood, looking devastated, landed and ran towards Professor McGonagall without getting off his broomstick. "But Professor," said Prudence, "we got to play the cup, Gryffindor!" Professor McGonagall ignored him and continued to shout through her megaphone. All students had to make their way back to the house common rooms, where the heads of houses will bestart their intonation as quickly as you can, please. Then she lowered the megaphone and beckoned Harry up to her. "Potter, I think you'd better come with me." Wondering how she would possibly suspect it this time, Harry saw Ron detach himself from the complaining crowd. He came running up to them and sat up towards the castle. To Harry's surprise, Professor McGonagall didn't object. "Yes, perhaps you'd better come too, Weasley." Some of the students swarming around them were grumbling about the match being cancelled. Others looked worried. Harry and Ron followed Professor McGonagall back into the school and up the marble staircase. But they weren't taken to anybody's office this time. "This will be a bit of a shock," said Professor McGonagall in a surprisingly gentle voice, and approached the hospital wing. "There's been another attack. Another double attack." Harry's inside did a horrible somersault. As Professor McGonagall pushed the door open and he and Ron entered. Madame Pomfrey was bending over a fifth-year girl with long curly hair. Harry recognized her as the Ravenclaw that accidentally asked for directions to the Slytherin common room. And on the bed next to her was "Hermione!" Ron groaned. Hermione lay utterly still, her eyes open and glassy. "They were found near the library," said Professor McGonagall softly. "I don't suppose I can just explain this. It was on the floor next to them." She was holding up a small circular mirror. Harry and Ron shook their heads, both staring at Hermione. "I will escort you back to Gryffindor Tower," said Professor McGonagall heavily. "I need to address the students in any case." All students will return to house common rooms by 6 o'clock in this evening. No student is leave the dormitories after that time. You will be escorted to each lessons by a teacher. No student is to use the bathroom unaccompanied by a teacher. All further cricket training and matches are to be postponed. There will be no more evening activities. The Gryffindors packed inside the common room, listened to Professor McGonagall in silence. She rolled up the parchment from which she had been reading and said in a somewhat choked voice, "I need hardly add, but I have rarely been so distressed. It is likely that the school will be closed unless the carpet behind this attack is cut. I would urge anyone who thinks they might know anything about them to come forward." She climbed somewhat awkwardly out of the portrait hall, and the Gryffindors began talking immediately. "Let's 2 Gryffindors down, not counting a Gryffindor ghost, 1 Ravenclaw, and 1 Hufflepuff," said the Weasley twins' friend, Lee Jordan, counting on his fingers. "Haven't any of the teachers noticed that the Slytherins are safe? Isn't it obvious all this stuff's coming from Slytherin? The heir of Slytherin, the master of Slytherin. Why don't they just chuckle all of the Slytherins out?" she roared, to nest them a scatter of pearls. Percy Weasley was sitting in a chair behind Lee, but for once he didn't seem keen to make his views heard. He was looking pale and stunned. "Percy's in shock," George told Harry quietly. The Ravenclaw girl had been clearer to Swiss prefect. "I don't think she's the monster would dare attack a prefect." But Harry was only half a Weasley. He didn't seem to be able to get rid of the picture of Hermione lying on the hospital bed, as though carved out of stone. And the cover was soon he was looking at a lifetime back with the Dursleys. Tom Riddle had turned Hagrid in because he was faced with the prospect of a Muggle orphanage if the school closed. Harry now knew exactly how he had felt. "What are we going to do?" said Ron quietly in Harry's ear. "They think they suspect Hagrid." "We got to go and talk to him," said Harry, making up his mind. "I can't believe it's this time, but if he sent the monster loose last time, he'll know how to get inside the Chamber of Secrets, and that's a start." "But McGonagall said we got to stay in our tower unless we're in class." "I think," said Harry, very quietly still, "it's time to get my dad's old cloak out again." Harry had inherited just one thing from his father, a long and silvery invisibility cloak. It was their only chance to sneaking out of the school to visit Hagrid without anyone knowing about it. They went to bed to the reasonable time, waited until Neville, Dean, and Seamus had stopped discussing the Chamber of Secrets, and finally fallen asleep. Then got up, dressed again, and threw the cloak over themselves. The journey through the dark and deserted classroom corridors wasn't enjoyable. The Harry would won the castle at night as several times before, had never seen it so crowded after sunset. Teachers, prefects, and ghosts were marching the corridors in pairs, staring around for any unusual activity. Their invisible cloak didn't stop them making any noise, and there was a particularly tense moment when Ron stopped his toe only yards from the spot where Snape stood standing guard. Thankfully, Snape sneezed, and almost exactly the moment Ron swore. It was relief that to reach the hall front doors and ease them open. It was a starry night. They hurried towards the linked windows of Hagrid's house and pulled up the cloak only when they were right outside his front door. Seconds after they had knocked, Hagrid flung it open. They found themselves face to face with him, aiming a crossbow at them, Fang the boarhound barking loudly behind them. "Oh," he said, lowering the weapon and staring at them. "What are you two doing here?" "What's that for?" said Harry, pointing at the crossbow as he stepped inside. Nothing, Hagrid muttered. "I've been expecting, doesn't matter, sit down. I like tea." He hardly seemed to know what he was doing. He nearly extinguished the fire, spilling water from the kettle on it, and then smashed the teapot with a nervous jerk in his massive hand.
재미있게 들으셨다면 구독과 좋아요 꾹꾹 눌러주시고 다음 영상에서 만나요. 안녕!